Finally, after begging you guys to suggest me anything manga, manhwa or anime, I can make this video that I have always wanted to make. In today's video I'm gonna talk about 12 manga manhwa suggestions by you guys. By the way, don't hate me please, because some recommendations that you guys made were questionable. And please, don't forget to subscribe or like this video because it was a hassle to edit this. In the early stages of a manga storyline, there needs to be a certain element for the manga to stand out. Bleach had its amazing art, One Piece had its mysterious treasure, and more recently, Chainsaw Man and Dandadan stand out for their wild premises. However, Kagurabachi lacks such distinctive elements. Their art is mediocre at best, with most characters having the same dull expression on their faces and being drawn in very stiff positions from a flat angle. The premise is an edgy revenge story that we have seen many times in many different anime, and we have already seen it perfected in Vinland Saga. 18 years ago, during the Seiten War, I don't know how to pronounce it, Kunishige Rokuhira was the most renowned man in Japan. As a master swordsmith, he forged 6 enchanted blades, each imbued with a special power that secured the nation's victory. After the war, Kunishige retired to the mountains with his son, Chihiro, who began learning the craft. Nearing his 15th birthday, the level-headed Chihiro resolved to one day succeed his father. However, his plans were derailed when he witnessed a group of powerful sorcerers kill his father and steal the sacred blades. 3 years after the incident, Chihiro lives on with hatred in his heart and an intense desire for revenge. Wielding the Enten, the 7th and final enchanted blade Kunishige created in secret, Chihiro cuts down evil doors associated with the Hishaku, the organization he believes to be responsible for his father's death. Chihiro has yet to unlock the Enten's full potential or perfect his swordsmanship, but he will stop at nothing to retrieve the stolen katanas, avenge his father and honor the legacy he left behind. The fights use magical swords with powers similar to what we have already seen done better in Bleach, as well as generic sorcery which consists of uninteresting abilities like teleportation and magnetic control. There are also certain plot elements such as a person who is the last remaining survival of their clan being hunted for their special abilities, and a large underworld auction where something related to the protagonist is being sold, of which both have been seen before in Hunter x Hunter. Don't get me wrong, if it's already made, it doesn't mean the same idea will be bad, but Kagurabachi missed every aspect of this kinds of manga anime story about revenge. Personally, I don't recommend you guys to read this, and it really felt it was drawn by an amateur. Yeah, I know I'm judging it really hard. The characters are easily the weakest point of the series, with all of them given only a simple personality and lacking any distinctive traits, charisma or chemistry together. The same goes for the villains, who have all been forgettable evil bad guys up until this point. This is mostly a result of the plot of Kagurabachi moving way too fast. Recent anime like Chainsaw Man and Jujutsu Kaisen gave their characters some backstory, motivations we could get behind, and distinctive character traits before the main plot started moving, while Kagurabachi has already jumped straight into it with characters nobody cares about. Creatures known as Gai have frequently attacked cities and brought destruction. Exterminating these monsters quickly became a popular and well-respected profession, carried out by magical girls. More than 500 magical girl companies, ranging from small ventures to large corporations, offered their aid to those who need it. Kana Sakuragi is a college graduate struggling to land a job despite attending numerous interviews, but when a guy attacks during her latest interview, she finds herself assisting the magical girl responding to the crisis. Although she lacks battle experience, Kana relies on her exceptional memory and knowledge to help subdue the monster. Hitomi Koshigaya, the headstrong magical girl who faced the guy, recognizes Kana's potential and invites her to join MagiLumiere Magical Girl Corporation, the startup where Hitomi works. Wishing to make a difference, Kana accepts the offer to become a magical girl herself. While Kana may not be suited for the corporate world, it soon becomes clear that her true calling is to rise as one of the most talented magical girl in existence. The art here is dynamic, I can say that, and the character designs are eye-catching. And though the protagonist is not a big step away from the modern shonen protagonist who obsesses over justice and morality, her interactions with the strange and quirky main characters, along with her experiences of working in a corporate job, shine through. You can clearly tell that the mangaka has gone through some corporate jobs before. Yet, one issue narratively here is that despite being a shonen manga that depends on incorporating dynamic fight scenes into the story, there is very little sense of conflict and threat each time the characters embark on a fight. There seem to be too few stakes in the action scenes, with characters consistently and constantly making out of conflicts. Though they learn new things about themselves that nicely advances character development, they never seem to experience the agony of having their life threatened. This can really diminish the urgency of action scenes, making them feel more like showcases of characters and their personalities than tense and exciting situations. I want to touch on the setting, as this is a really interesting spin by having a corporate world as the backdrop and setting the main characters up in a startup company while having an antagonistic figure in a huge corporation CEO. The manga touches on real-world issues like the social effects of capitalism, corporation dominance, and the treatment of workers and their work. Yet, despite this bold step, the story here seems to be adopting a rather simplistic perspective of this whole system, which is weird. This is quite as simplistic as I said, and exaggerated rendering of things. For instance, it does not fully take into account the wide effects of this economic and political system, not fully rendering the effect of treating people as expendable, depicting them more as one-offs and focusing on the main characters and their desirable working conditions under a fictional startup. In the face of this simplistic ideology, the story can seem extremely naive, which makes it hard to take the very real issue that the story is trying to grapple with seriousness. Okay, let's start with the setting and the world building. It's extremely unique. It is pretty much like the synopsis suggests. Creatures called gods have infested Tokyo, the area where gods are labeled as danger zones. If gods make eye contact with you, you're basically dead. That's why everybody wears masks. The manga does a good job at conveying urgency, and it has great action scenes too. The light-hearted moments are very nicely conveyed too. They don't have any forced type jokes, and it feels very natural. It could have done a better job at transitioning into the light-hearted to serious moments, but it isn't that noticeable and it won't ruin your experience. This is all I recommend you know before going into this manga, and the next few parts include slight spoilers. The story is, well, pretty generic. The main character gets possessed by something, an idea we have seen a lot with manga past decade. The main character loses control and gets saved by a group of people. Again, very generic. The characters are okay written. The main character's motivation is somewhat unique. She does not have a stupidly tragic backstory and feels very human. Her personality is basic but in a good way. She acts like a real person, but to some people that may be a downside. There is one comic relief character that people may find annoying, but it didn't really bother me, but it bothered me. One of the characters is basically the opposite to the main character. If you like chaos, there is something for you too. In the seclusion of an ancient temple in a deeply hidden, wooded mountain range, two strangers, a young woman and a mysterious young man who hides his face behind a monkey mask, meet as they seek shelter from a storm. In order to make it more comfortable to hold out against the pouring rain in the temple, the woman asks the man to tell her a story. Narrative is a lot like the movie Rashomon by Akira Kurosawa. It's a great movie, practically the same structure as this manhwa, so if you have watched this movie and liked it, you will for sure like this manhwa. The art is good, and the story he is telling her, the princess in that story, is such a brat, spoiled, but she is brave and kind to her mates, which is weird. Her husband is so gorgeous, you could not believe he is human. The plot is quite simple, a world full of demons and people to kill them, exorcists. With a fun art style, cool designs and lovable characters, this manga has been a lovely read so far. Reading it hasn't been hard as the plot isn't confusing and the pacing is good, the fights aren't dragged out and all the abilities and powers are unique. It's not just your generic elemental battleground. The art is one of the best things of this manga, a stylistic blend between cartoony and anime. It paves the way to express characters and cool looking demons in a new sense. It's also not something you see every day, making it more distinctive to any other modern day shonen. However, the manga does suffer from being cliché at times, although most shonens nowadays are. Even though some of it may be predictable, the panelic, stylistic art and characters make it enjoyable and easy to binge read. The first chapter though was not great, and this may be a big reason why it's not too popular. Everything is info dump on the first chapter, so nothing new there, but it bounced right back in chapter 2. Of course, this manga is not perfect, hence why I said I'm cutting it a bit of slack, as there are some points that come off a bit cliché to me, but they really were few and far in between. I actually haven't read a manga as quickly as I read this one, so yeah, you can binge it in like 2 hours, you can read it full. It's a simple and easy read for all people, and I heavily recommend getting into it while you can. Hotsurugi Hibaru is our protagonist and the biological son of the head of Hotsurugi clan, accompanied by Terasu, one of the few adoptive children in the family. One day, meteors fall on the earth and just everyone has powers. That's all. From that point onwards, everything in society falls apart as people abuse their powers. The first problem I had while reading the first chapters was just how ambiguous and convenient for the characters the power system is. There is not really neither a straight nor deep reason as why some people have astros and others don't. They just bring up that they wished for something. That usually brings me with the problem that the world in this series is convenient for the protagonist and wraps around what they need instead of making a harmony between them. This is one of the things I didn't like at the start, how the power system is an excuse to poorly tell the story of characters. I don't like when a character does something and then he immediately goes like, it's because I wished for, and then just explain to you a very ambiguous wish and how that works as a power. People can like it and I can see that, but I couldn't stop feeling like the dialogue never really followed this exposition, neither the world. It just feels like what I stated earlier, like a poor pretext to just fight. We want to fight, so let's fight. That's it. The world around us, how the power works, is just irrelevant. I swear Astro Royale, it's like Tokyo Revengers. I recommend you to give it an opportunity. If you like Tokyo Revengers, you will like this too, because it is from Tokyo Revengers author. When opening Galaxias, you'd probably ask that question. I did. I was looking for that moment, the moment that any reader for a new series experiences that makes them say, yeah, I think I'm going to like this. For me, it took 5 chapters. Not to say that the first 4 were boring, quite the contrary. In this story, a famous adventurer named Yuri Holst has done more or less everything imaginable. Gio, a young woman from a small island, dreams of going on a worldwide adventure. She meets a young man with a tail who has lost his memories. The two have one thing in common. They have a connection to Yuri Holst. Gio names the young man Nereid. What is unique about Galaxias is that it can go anywhere story-wise. It's action, adventure, mystery, with a fantasy backdrop. Currently, the power system lies in individuals known as Dragonfolk. They are humans with cool-looking tails and special abilities such as combustion creation, shape-shifting, and stone manipulation, to name a few. There is room for some great world building as well. If you have watched Made in Abyss, it's the same thing, so you will like this too. First of all, I'd like to say I'm not familiar with any of Kagesaki's other works, mostly referring to Rainbow since that's his most famous one, so I'm not going to be making any comparisons to anything else he's worked on. With that out of the way, Hideout is a very short series. I don't imagine it would take more than an hour or two to read it all, and that might be a very generous estimate depending on how fast you read. Since it's only 9 chapters, you might not be expecting a whole lot as far as depth of the plot goes, but Kagesaki actually manages to spin a fairly human, depressing story with a little space given. The premise, the couple getting lost and stumbling into an utterly horrific experience, is executed well enough. You get to see what led up to all this, the circumstances behind the death of the couple's son, and the grisly aftermath, as the husband slowly loses everything important in his life. His son, his wife, her family, his career, everything goes spiraling downwards, and the man is slowly driven into madness. I am sure the surprises waiting for them in the cave didn't exactly help his mental state either. I'm not sure that I would be driven to the extremes the protagonist goes to, but it's all part of the tragedy, so I guess it's fine. Given that it's only 9 chapters, it does a pretty good job of making you feel involved and making you care about what goes on. That said, while the plot gets a thumbs up for me, the main thing Hideout has going for it is the art. It takes an extremely skilled artist to paint true terror and create landscapes and imagery that are genuinely frightening. Kagisaki is almost up there with Kentaro Miura in the horror scenes department. Everything is marvelously shaded, detailed, and bleak, which makes the gruesome content of Hideout so much more potent. I wish I could say more about this manga, but there really is not much else to say. Hideout is a good 9-chapter series with a good plot and absolutely outstanding artwork. It will not take you very long to read, and it's certainly worth your time to check it out. 666 Satan was done by Seishi Kishimoto, brother to Masashi Kishimoto, Naruto's creator. The first 10 or 20 chapters of this manga will be filled with similarities between scenarios and concept of Naruto, with moments that I can't quite understand if they were plagiarized from Naruto or just a simple homage. From the protagonist Geoffrey, who was bullied by other kids his age, who doesn't have a father, who has an absurd dream that of course will be achieved by the power of determination and friendship, and even to the concept of having an evil monster residing within him. The similarities are just too many. And that's just mentioning Geo. Like, did I mention there are numbered beasts that are being gathered by organizations? A typical generic shonen plot that spans from the protagonist's childhood to his adolescence, adulthood, depending on when he defeats the antagonist. A plot that really doesn't go anywhere until a time skip happens around the later half of the manga, which by then would have been like 30 chapters. Of course, it starts from a very grounded standpoint until the story absurdly scales to a planetary level and then a universal level. A truly ridiculous plot with nothing remotely interesting going on. Even if the concept managed to be interesting, it doesn't manage to draw you in and make you care at all. Art is horrendous. It gets better nearing the end, which shows the mangaka actually made the progress on his drawing skills. There are some really nicely done action panels and dynamic poses, but they are not worthy considering most of the art on these 76 chapters is downright bad. Characters None of them are interesting, none of them will make you care about them or what happens to them. Most of them aren't even likable, badly designed characters that are truly displeasing to look at, one-dimension personalities. The only thing they do is preach about friendship and promises and the power of the heart. For once, as it is a rare case for many as well as myself, I was hooked onto the series after just reading the first couple of chapters. The plot was already immensely intriguing. I could not help but to see the following series of events from the beginning or just meeting the three main protagonists. I just wanted to see what sorts of incidents and encounters they would have to confront later in the story. From the start, the adventure that takes place sets off the story. Then, as the plot progresses, drama becomes another complementary factor that steers in more details and background about characters and settings. Those details, along with multiple cliffhanger scenes, drive the story forward. Although maybe somewhat subtle and hidden, one can see that the fights and battles that take place for particular reasons. The manhwa artist truly utilizes his characters skillfully in a way to illustrate the themes and feelings which a reader can personalize with. Tension, distress, and joy are all provided with efficient and illustrative details from the art, narration, and dialogues. It was pretty good, so you have my permission to try this manhwa. Basically, Yureka takes place in the future of Korea, in which the online game called Lost Saga is the most popular MMORPG at that time. The manga starts slow but gets really good after a handful of chapters. The lead character, Young-gun, is one of the better players in Lost Saga. He could be a bit arrogant, but his quick thinking and strategic thinking makes him one of the tougher opponents to beat. Yureka is a mysterious girl in which you learn more about her as the story progresses. The author has introduced a lot of characters into the story and does a pretty good job in having the fact that each of the characters play some role in the plot of the series. The characters are really one of the most strongest aspects of the story. Since it is a MMORPG, each character is a part of a class or classes. One of the things that the author does is pitting characters against other. The battles themselves are just who has the strongest spells or items. Each character has his or her style fighting, in which these styles clash when they fight. It often leads to some exciting battles, but I have to say 60 to 70% of the manhwa is filled with these kinds of battles, so be prepared. But the battles are exciting and the characters themselves have their own beliefs and ego in which they play, which adds enrichment to the story. In conclusion, I think Yureka is an enjoyable MMORPG which has many interesting things about the story. Unlike another story like Sword Art Online, I feel that the characters have real feelings and have real society impact. It is basically a serious and more realistic Sword Art Online. This work was like an amazing adaptation from a classical Western movie to Japanese manga. Kagizaki Masasumi made such a wonderful piece of art. The story was great, easy to understand, without warped plots or difficult ideas that blow your mind. It was simple, a bad guy experienced in battle, and murder has an insatiable bloodthirst. He wants desperately to kill his father and avenge his mother, without his brother finding out that he is a gangster. What makes it a fantastic tale is the thrilling suspense that fills it. You never know what will happen. You expect something to happen or someone to die, and then, in a realistic way, another incredible thing occurs. During this outstanding manga, you will accompany the Byrne brothers in their path towards revenge, a dream, and their happiness. Besides, the author uses some pages to tell us some historical facts as a context. These are well located in some chapters and they contain interesting info. In regards to the draw art, I only have one thing to say. simply wonderful. Amazing battle scenes, well done. It's easy to understand what happens in each panel. The scenery is awesome, delightful saloons, wonderful desert landscape, well painted animals, especially horses. All the images were drawn with plenty of details and the author used the shades in a spectacular way. The characters have an overwhelming figure. None of them looked like being drawn fast, otherwise with too much care, including those in the backgrounds. There are only three main characters, the Burns siblings, Brad and Luke, and the bastard gang leader Edward King, their father. There are also some supporting characters well made. Regarding to the main characters, they are well built, each of them has his background and development throughout the manga. However, the supporting characters have a little explanation. I really enjoyed this story, it had one of the best draw arts I have ever seen. Cool characters that fitted with his historical western work. So, that's it for today's video. I hope you guys liked it and don't hate me afterwards. I have to say one thing, my friend is making the next vid. If you guys didn't know, my friend and I are making videos on this channel and the next one will be his. So stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe. We will be more consistent, I promise. Thanks a lot for watching. Goodbye.